Hi everyone, welcome to World Have Your Say. I'm Lucy Hawkins. In today's program, a guilty verdict in the trial of the former Liberian President Charles Taylor. Do you think it was fair? If you live in Liberia or in Sierra Leone, you may have a different view on this, so do get in contact with us. Undoubtedly though, it was a landmark moment for international justice. We'll be joined by international prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo, and we'll be asking him who will be next to face the judges in The Hague. Our hashtag, as always, is WHYS. Let's get the conversation going. Welcome to World Have Your Say. Charles Taylor found guilty yesterday by an international criminal court. Do you think justice has been done? Well, with me here in London to start our conversation is Nadia Maddy, the author of the book The Palm Oil Stain, about the conflict in Sierra Leone. Aaron Palmer is a lawyer based in Washington, D.C. And joining us from Liberia is Laura Golika, media monitor at the Liberia Media Centre. Thank you all for joining us. Nadia, if I could start with you, that central question, has justice been done?
Well, justice has been done. This guy was invincible, and we never thought that he would be brought to justice, but justice has been done, yes. I have to say, though, that he wasn't the only one involved.
Who else would you like to see brought to justice?
Well, I mean, there are various people at the moment, but I would say justice has been done, the ball has started. I think the people of Sierra Leone are watching right now. They want to get on with their lives, and they're worried about, how they're going to feed themselves, as most of them are now disabled from the war.
Laura, if we could bring you in from Liberia, what was your reaction to the verdict?
Personally, I feel it was politically motivated. Charles Taylor was already convicted in a court of public opinion even before the trial, and significantly, the verdict was brought down before independence. It looked like it was a gift to the people of Sierra Leone, trying to appease them. After all, the white people spent a lot of money on this, so a guilty verdict would be like a positive thing for them. Handing down a negative, non-guilty verdict could have been a waste of time and money.
Nadia, how do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, what's happened, I would think that this was a West African problem because ECOMOG was sent in there. So not only have the people of Sierra Leone and Liberia suffered, but lots of Nigerians, Ghanaians, Gambians, their sons were sent to war to help out those regions, and they died. So I think the whole of West Africa is looking at this and, are slightly relieved, actually.
Well, let's bring in Luis Moreno Ocampo, the first prosecutor at the International Criminal Court. He joins us on Skype from The Hague in the Netherlands. Thank you for joining us. I know you didn't directly work on the Charles Taylor case. We don't have him quite yet, actually. He will be joining us shortly, though. Let's return to you, or bring you in, Aaron Palmer. You're a lawyer based in Washington, D.C. Were you happy with the trial?
Thank you. I think this is a very important trial, a very important verdict. As many people know, it's the first of its kind since World War II. It has important precedential value and paves the way for similar criminal trials in international criminal tribunals moving forward.
Is that the main thing that you take away from this, that this was a landmark legal case and will be looked at closely?
I think it is a landmark case that will be looked at closely, and I think that the Special Court of Sierra Leone took great pains to ensure the legitimacy of the trial and obviously spent a long time deliberating and creating a very thoughtful opinion and considering all of the evidence, which was very extensive.
So, Aaron, do you think this sends a message to other leaders who might believe that they are above the law?
I think that it sends a message about accountability and certainly paves the way for additional trials against heads of state for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
People have been asking, though, on Twitter particularly, why it took so long, Aaron? Why 5 years? That seems like such a long time for many.
I think part of it is based on the novelty of the case, that very rarely are heads of state tried for these types of crimes. There was a massive amount of evidence. I think, if I recall correctly, the prosecution called 94 witnesses, in addition to the physical evidence that needed to be marshaled. And I think there's a lot of care that was given to how the case progressed to ensure that it was imbued with legitimacy.
Aaron, stay with us. Let's have a listen now to the judge yesterday who described some of the atrocities committed during the conflict in Sierra Leone.
People were beheaded and their heads displayed on checkpoints. During Operation No Living Thing, during the junta period in Kenema Town, a civilian was killed in full public view, and then his body was disemboweled and his intestines stretched across the road to make a checkpoint. Women and girls were raped in public. People were burned alive in their homes. The trial chamber finds beyond reasonable doubt that the purpose of these atrocities charged in counts 2 to 8 was to instill terror in the civilian population.
Let's return now to Laura Goloka, who is in Liberia. Laura, how do you feel when you hear the judge describing some quite graphic things that went on during the war?
Well, I feel pity because the man he's talking about, the convicted criminal, is our former president. And I mean, a seed of discord has been planted between the Liberians and the Sierra Leoneans, thanks to the white people. And I feel this judge, she was under the influence of Great Britain in the United States, and he couldn't have done any other thing because even through all the indictment, when he was reading the verdict, he said that he did not, Charles Taylor did not directly, support the RUF, but he aided and abetted the RUF. So the question comes to mind, Great Britain and America has aided and abetted wars in Libya, they have aided and abetted wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq. So if Charles Taylor did not directly influence the RUF rebels who were Sierra Leoneans, they went and killed their own people, why don't we charge George Bush and the others? They aided and abetted wars. Even recently in Africa, they toppled a president. So they should be brought to the War Crimes Court for aiding and abetting war crimes in and around Africa, not only Charles Taylor.
Laura, stay with us. Let's put some of those points to Luis Moreno Ocampo, who does join us now from The Hague. Thank you very much for being with us here on World Have Your Say. What do you say to Laura when she says it's white men who want to see Charles Taylor behind bars? This is the work of the US and Britain. Put George Bush behind bars as well.
I think it's right that there are double standards in the world today. We still not have one standard that everyone is equal. But they are moving in the direction. And I think I like that she requests justice for everyone, but in the meantime, we have to be pleased that at least today, we have a day in which a fair court, decided that Charles Taylor is responsible for the awful crimes committed in Sierra Leone. I think that's good. It's not the last step, it has to be one step in the long journey to make justice in the world, but it's the right direction.
Did the verdict yesterday take war crimes jurisprudence to a whole other level?
I think the more important issue is confirming this trend that the world is not accepting leaders committing massive atrocities, confirming this trend that no one is above the law. Still, what we do is implement that, but this is the most important thing. This case is showing that Charles Taylor was a powerful man, is today convicted.
We'd like to bring in a comment from Sal Jolla, who wrote to us on the World Have Your Say Facebook page, who said this trial was a mere formality. Everybody knew that it would end with Charles Taylor being guilty. This was just a waste of time and resources. Luis Moreno Ocampo, this is a common theme from people who have contacted us. It took too long and it cost too much money.
Wars are much more expensive. There's no money to do justice for victims. So I believe it's important that we are not repeating just what Charles Taylor was doing. We cannot just go and kill him. A fair trial will be the way to change these massive atrocities. And the trial shows important things. For instance, it's very interesting to see that while Charles Taylor was involved in the negotiation, at the same time, he was secretly providing weapons and supporting the rebels' crimes. So I think that is something we have to learn and to avoid in the future, what to do much better conflict management systems. So that's why I think it's very important trial, and we have to keep learning how to improve the world.
Laura, you're still with us in Liberia. What do you have to say?
I don't know what is his idea of justice. I don't feel justice has prevailed in the case yesterday. We are talking about millions, if not thousands, of Sierra Leoneans who are directly affected. Did this we have to be asking ourselves, did this verdict bring the arms of those Sierra Leoneans back? Did it improve their lives? Why spend this lot of money on a single man when you could use that money to better the lives of Sierra Leoneans who lost their future because of the war that was perpetrated by their own people? Why use this single Liberian trying to appease those Sierra Leonean politicians, trying to appease the white politicians on a single man when you could use that amount of money? That was a waste of time and money. 5 years, what? Trying to prove what? That he was guilty? I mean, that was just a waste of money. You could use that to improve the lives of Sierra Leoneans who are living in poverty there. I mean, they need economic development. That is justice. That justice is not only bringing a single man saying he's convicted of war crimes. That is not justice for me.
Passionate argument there from Laura. Do you have a response, Mr. Moreno Ocampo?
I think she's right to require economic rights. Of course, when you're very poor, you need jobs, you need to have a food on your table. But I know that the first thing is not to be killed. So I'm very glad that for her, the issue is now about economic development. It's true, but it's true because the Charles Taylor's crime were stopped and he was convicted. That will make a difference. So again, justice for Charles Taylor is not the last thing, but it's a very good step in the right direction.
Nadia, if you're still with us, listening in on these two, what's your response?
Well, I mean, you know, yes, Charles Taylor being convicted is a landmark, you know, and it's a relief. But at the end of the day, the child soldiers who were involved, they're now in their 30s. So it took a long time, and you know, people need to eat. We're talking 2 generations of people who have been devastated, absolutely devastated, and they can't feed themselves. And I think they'll be looking at this thinking, well, yeah, you know, they found him guilty, we know that anyway, but you know what, I can't feed myself. And we're talking, you know, 2 generations of people. So it's a whole country devastated, on its knees. It was on its knees before, and it's going to be completely destroyed. You know, so Charles Taylor's been found guilty. Now, we've got to feed ourselves. How do we do that? How does the country do that? 10 years later, it's still on its knees.
Okay, Nadia, thanks so much for that. Thanks to all of you. Just to let you know, we're getting many people phoning in. Canada, Pakistan, Zambia, Liberia, Norway, Cameroon, Germany, all countries with an interest in this calling us. We hope to get to some of you soon, but do stay with us here on World Have Your Say. Well, as I mentioned, the phone line's going crazy. Let's take you straight to Maddie Savage, who joins us now from the Bush House newsroom. Maddie.
Well, our Facebook wall is already filling up with comments to people from Zimbabwe, Malawi and Saudi Arabia. And as you were saying, lots of phone calls in the last few minutes, people from Sweden, Mauritius and Libya. Alfred Asoya in Nigeria got in touch with this question. He says, with Charles Taylor out of the way, what will become of his connections in America? He says other people who sponsored and engineered what happened still walk the streets of the world. But many of you say you want to focus on the future now, and you hope that the verdict will stop politicians from doing anything similar again. Beatrice in Sierra Leone says she wants elections in November to be free, fair and most importantly without violence. You can still get in touch with us on our Facebook page, or if you're on Twitter, keep using the hashtag WHYS.
Do get in contact with us. We'd love to hear from you. You can see the contact numbers there. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. We're talking about the guilty verdict in the trial of the former Liberian president, Charles Taylor. It's been hugely controversial. Lots of you tweeting us, posting comments on the Facebook page as well. Let's just bring in one other comment from Ziggy Zap, commenting on the Washington Post. The Americans are great at calling for war crimes trials against foreigners, but will not allow their own to be tried, even when they have been responsible for thousands of deaths. Let's get a comment on that from Luis Moreno Ocampo, who joins us now from The Hague. What do you say to Ziggy Zap?
I like the people claiming for more justice. That's what we need. And it's true, there are still countries who are above the law. So we have to keep working to have a more equal world. But it's a fight. It's a long journey. We're moving in the right direction. 20 years ago, nothing of this was happening. So this idea is moving a lot. And now we have to keep moving in the right direction. And again, convicting Charles Taylor is a good step in the right direction. It's not the final step, it's the right direction.
How much weight did it add to your whole argument about the integrity of international law, though, seeing him face that verdict in court yesterday?
The issue is, for instance, this was a special court for Sierra Leone, so the only country involved was Sierra Leone. And that was a way in which Sierra Leone is dealing with its past, which is not the only problem, but it's an important problem. In addition to that, the International Criminal Court exists, and 121 states are members of this treaty. So in these 121 countries, this is the law. No one is above the law, and no victim is below the law. But there are others, almost 62 countries, who are still, the law is not yet, international law is not yet applicable. That's why it's true what many of the people in the audience are saying, that there are still countries who are not reachable by the law. That is true, and it's a need to keep discussing and progressing.
We're getting many questions in on the Facebook page, also on Twitter, about other leaders in the world. Afusa in Cameroon says, why has Laurent Gbagbo not been arrested? Why has no one after Alassane Ouattara been arrested? What do you say about those many other leaders that people want to see brought to justice? Okay,
I can give information. Laurent Gbagbo is arrested. In fact, Laurent Gbagbo is here in The Hague, in Scheveningen, in the prison here, under the arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, and he will be prosecuted. So some of them are prosecuted, and Gbagbo in particular is here arrested. He's in a prison in Netherlands.
Okay, well, let's bring in Yasmin Kadi, who is the lead singer of Kadi and the Tricks. She joins me here in London. Her band writes about the effects of the conflict in Sierra Leone. Thanks for joining us. What was your feeling yesterday when you heard about the guilty verdict for Charles Taylor?
The thing is, the fence I sit on it's not as much is he guilty, is he not guilty. My main concern is the effect this war has had on many Sierra Leoneans, including myself. When I was in Sierra Leone, shortly after the war, say at about 2, 3 in the morning, 2 truckload of soldiers broke into our home, smashed the windows and the doors, dragged my dad outside, dragged the whole family outside, you know, beated my dad till his ears were bleeding. It was just absolutely horrendous. And that was very difficult for us. But I know everyone's focusing on the Charles Taylor being convicted now issue, but my issue is the effects the war has had on many people who are still suffering up till today. That's where I sit on the fence. So.
Do you think the verdict, though, helps people move forward, dissipate some of the pain and the anger?
I'm sure it has, but like I say, I don't have any evidence to say he is guilty or not guilty, and I'm sure it takes more than one person to make, you know, a war go ahead. But I'm sure many people would be happy and have some sort of closure to this. Yeah.
Bali joins us now on the line from Guinea. What do you have to say, Bali? Bali, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I'm from Liberia and not Guinea.
Okay, tell us your thoughts. Sorry for getting that wrong.
Yeah, I'm here from Buchanan City, some 280 kilometers away from Monrovia. And I've been listening to the earlier speaker, and I feel that it brought some sort of shock on the faces of many Liberians, most especially to where I am residing presently. And like I said yesterday to some of your colleagues from the Bush House, and I said that most people were sitting in the corner, afraid, thinking that, because as we all know, Taylor still has more loyalists in Liberia than anywhere. So people were kind of afraid that some of his loyalists took onto the streets and being so disgruntled and causing mayhem. And as you learn, the UN had to put a hold onto their staff from going to work, and some public offices were also shut down because of this news.
Vali, I'm sorry, we're going to have to interrupt you. It's been very difficult to hear you, but we thank you for calling us, and we'd like to return now to Luis Moreno Ocampo, who joins us from The Hague, just to bring in some of the other comments that people have been sending us, particularly from Liberia, feeling angry that no one has been charged there for any crimes committed during their war. They're angry that their former president is on trial for another country's war.
I understand, but you have to understand, at the end of the day, it was proven in a court of justice that Charles Taylor was part of the crime committed in Sierra Leone, that he provided weapons and he supported, and also was proven that he planned some of the incidents. And that should be something important for Sierra Leone and Liberians, because what happened is massive crimes are committed by massive number of people. Charles Taylor was not alone, but was very important. And they commit massive number of crimes and many victims. So it's difficult to prosecute each case. That's why we need the victim's understanding. We understand your concern, but it's important that similar crimes committed by Charles Taylor in different places, like Sierra Leone, are trial, and the judges found he is guilty. That's very important. And for me, it's not the end. In Liberia, they can organize more trials if they decide to do it, and they can request that. Liberia can do trials. In Argentina, I prosecuted generals in '85, and 35 years later, are still prosecuting other people. So it's a long journey. Germany happened the same. Germany was prosecuting Nazi people for many, many years. So massive atrocities are committed by a massive number of people. It's difficult to prosecute all of them, but it's feasible. So keep insisting.
Okay, stay with us. Let's just bring you a comment from Liberia, members of Charles Taylor's family. They were adamant that he was the victim of a political trial.
We will not give up in this fight. We will not give up in this struggle. We are going to stand by Mr. Taylor up till death do us part. We will pursue the legal me. There is room for a few be taken. For some all 11 counts. That's what we said. We predicted that there will be a political judgment rendered at the end of the day. And the Americans and British people just prove us right. And so it's a mockery of democracy. It's a mockery of justice. To try Mr. Taylor, you convicted him on the basis of rape. It's unbelievable.
Let's get some reaction from Yasmin Kadi, who is still with us. What do you think when you hear those comments from Charles Taylor's family?
Honestly, I couldn't hear clearly what he was saying, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, fair enough. Tell us more then about your feelings about what's happening in Sierra Leone at the moment, how far the country has managed to progress.
How far has it managed to progress? I went to Sierra Leone in 2007, and from what I remember from when I was there, it hasn't really changed much, to be honest. In actual fact, it's gotten worse. I remember driving along the streets one day and just seeing all around me little children with no arms, no legs, no eyes, older people, the same thing. And there's no sewage system, it's just dire. I remember taking pictures of litter on the street so high, and I got told off by one of the women because she felt really embarrassed. And then I tried to explain to her, I said, look, I'm not a European lady, I'm from here, I'm from Sierra Leone. I want to take these pictures to show back
Yasmin, I have to interrupt you. We'll continue this very shortly. The contacts are there on the screen. Do get in contact. Thanks for being with us on World Have Your Say. We're talking about the guilty verdict for the former Liberian President Charles Taylor, a landmark moment for international justice. Some of you feel, though, he shouldn't have been found guilty for another country's war. Let's continue the conversation. We can talk to Aaron Palmer, who is a lawyer in Washington, D.C., Luis Moreno Ocampo, who is an international prosecutor who joins us from The Hague, and Nadia Maddy, author of the book The Palm Oil Stain, who is here in London, and Yasmin Yasmin, also a singer who joins me here in the studio. Erin, if we can go back to you, do you see this as a triumph for international justice?
I certainly do. I think it's an important step for international criminal trials in the future. It sets valuable precedent. I think it's one part of a much larger process. I think some of the commentary that I've heard has struck me that criminal trials are not the only part of ensuring justice. There needs to be some sort of rehabilitative efforts and action beyond retributive justice and punishment.
Yasmin, you're nodding your head.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. For example, the child soldiers, how are they going to get back into society? How is society going to accept them when a lot of them have killed their mums and dads and friends and family members? I mean, how do we begin that process? So I absolutely agree with her.
Yasmin, how do we begin that process?
It's very difficult because that's even happening in, say, somewhere like Ireland at the moment. It's something that's going to take decades. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So that's where Caddy and the Tricks come into it, because we focus on showing people and telling people about these issues and not just about this one particular man who has been trialed and convicted. It's what do we need to do after now to make Sierra Leone a better place. I personally feel it's, as a Sierra Leonean, it's my responsibility, hence why Caddy and the Tricks came about.
Nadia, can we get your feedback on that? Do you think that this verdict is being overplayed in a sense?
Sorry, do I think what, sorry?
The verdict is being overplayed in a sense, too much focus on it.
Well, he's been found guilty. He is a Lone Ranger. There were other people. People have to get on with their lives. In Sierra Leone, we don't have counsellors and things like that. The reality is the people on the ground are trying to feed themselves. So, there have been charities there doing what they can do. But if there are no jobs for those people who were child soldiers, the government obviously would need to look and address that sort of situation. So you've got child soldiers, ex-child soldiers walking around with no jobs. You've got people who have amputated with no prospects. I think that what the government needs to concentrate on, and not just the Sierra Leonean government, but the whole of West Africa, who this war affected. And let us remember that it didn't just start in the 90s. This has been going on since the 80s. So, we all need to look at this and learn from it and move forward in the sense of, what are we going to do? I know the whole world is suffering from the recession, but what can Sierra Leoneans, Liberians, Nigerians, Ghanaians, etc., what can we do to provide jobs? How do we become self-sufficient and help people to become self-sufficient? That's the major problem.
We're getting comments in from Switzerland, from the United States, from South Korea as well. If I could bring in Luis Moreno Ocampo again, how do you convince people that trials like this are an important part of the healing process?
But this important part, individual responsibility is established, just irresponsible, then we can go in two different directions. One, in Sierra Leone and Liberia, how to do something else for them, in particular for the child soldiers, how to restore, how to give education to them. But it's not just important for Sierra Leone or Liberia, it's important for the world, because we're still fighting to do justice in the world. We are still fighting to stop a genocide in Darfur today. We are still fighting to establish justice in Libya. So it's an ongoing battle to do justice in the world today. That's why Charles Taylor's decision is important for Liberia, for Sierra Leone, but for the entire world. We have to end impunity for these crimes. That is a condition to improve the life of people.
Let's bring in some of the comments from our Facebook page. Levi in Nairobi in Kenya wrote this to us. The thought that the ICC was set up only for third world countries is as nonsensical as nonsense itself. African leaders should try and behave themselves. Taylor should go and rot in jail, period. Luis Moreno Ocampo, perhaps you could clarify for us what happens now in terms of sentencing.
Probably in May will be a new hearing where the judges will listen to the prosecutor and the defense, and then will decide 10 days later the amount of years Charles Taylor will spend in jail.
We're also getting quite a few comments, people concerned that he is going to be put in jail here in Britain, and people saying the conditions that he'll face in jail here in Britain will be better than what many people have in Sierra Leone.
That's a problem. You know, in Rwanda, they have people volunteering to go to jail in Denmark and Norway because the conditions of life in the jails are much better than in Rwanda itself. So that's a problem showing how unequal is the world. But in any case, we cannot use prison to torture people. It had to be in good conditions.
Yasmin, how do you feel about the fact that he will serve his time here in Britain?
Well, this is exactly what I mean. It's not just about the conviction, because like we all rightly know, conditions here are much better than the conditions in Sierra Leone in the prisons. So again, my issue is moving on from this and helping the people who have actually suffered and are still suffering today. Like Nadia mentioned, I think we here and people all over the world need to do something about this. Get the children educated, help feed them, you know, not just give them handouts, but help make the situation better for Sierra Leoneans in Sierra Leone to be self-sufficient.
Erin?
I think that it's important to remember that Charles Taylor, regardless of where he will be imprisoned, is nonetheless in prison. And I think that that still maintains the deterrent effect of being convicted for the crimes that he was convicted of. It sends a message that if you do these things and commit these crimes or are involved in the commission of these crimes, that you will go to jail.
Nadia, do you think where he serves his prison sentence is relevant?
Well, you know, when you commit a crime like the one that was committed in Liberia and Sierra Leone, what's the worst that can happen?
Okay, Luis Moreno Ocampo, final comment on this issue?
If you're a head of state, lose your liberty is huge. A head of state in jail is a huge change. It's a deterrent.
Yasmin, just to return to you, what work are you doing? I mean, have you returned recently to the country to try and help?
Yes, like I said, I was there in 2007 and saw these things. And then when I came back, I thought, you know what, I need to do something about this. Originally, I was a singer-actress, Western theatre and TV. So I decided to give that up and put together Caddy and the Tricks. Like I said, Caddy and the Tricks, we write and sing about these issues that are happening to make people aware. That's the thing, a lot of people aren't aware. So for instance, today everyone's so focused on Charles Taylor being convicted, but they don't know so much about what's happened to the people who's suffering and what we need to do to help those people. So that's what we do. And I don't know if it's going to be on the screen. I was told by one of your producers it might be. But if people wanted to get in contact with us to check www.caddyandthetricks.com, and just because we know a lot of people want to talk about this, but they don't know how, they don't have the venues to talk about them and get their voices heard. So
okay, Yasmin, thanks for that. Can I bring in another comment from Facebook from Henry? And this is one I think for you, Mr. Ocampo, that the mastermind has been judged, but where are his right hands, the many other people involved in those crimes during the war in Sierra Leone? This perhaps comes back to the fact that the court was unable to prove command control yesterday. How do you address this?
It's okay, because the court found Mr. Taylor guilty of the case. You can prosecute other people and present new evidence showing their own responsibility. This is not precluding other cases. On the contrary, this could trigger more cases, and if you would like to insist on that, you can do it. Go to your country and present new cases. That was happening in Germany. That was happening in many countries in the world.
A comment from Mina in Nairobi: take action, but diversify your area of operation. Don't just target Africa. You make The Hague look like a political court. She's sending this to you.
What is wrong to investigate crimes committed against the African victims? What is wrong with that? We should investigate when African victims are killed, we have to protect them. That's what we are doing. So I think in Africa it's changing. There are many leaders changing and protecting people, but there are still few leaders who are trying to kill people to make power. They have to understand you cannot do that. You cannot kill African people to make power in Africa. You will not get solidarity using the colonial time to kill people in Africa. That's the message. We understand the suffering of the colonial time, but you cannot kill black people in Africa and then say, oh, it's colonial to investigate me. I cannot kill people. No.
Mr. Moreno Ocampo, thank you for that answer. I hope it also addresses this comment from Emmanuel in Ghana, who said on our Facebook page, justice must prevail everywhere and at all times. I hope when presidents from the West commit such crimes that they will also be dealt with. But perhaps that comment also dealt with there by our international prosecutor joining us from The Hague. Do stay with us here on World Have Your Say. We'll try and get more of your comments on the programme in a moment. Hi everyone, thanks for being with us on World Have Your Say. Let's take you straight to the Bush House newsroom. We can join Maddie Savage there. Maddie, I hear the phone lines are going crazy there.
Absolutely crazy. It's been an incredibly hectic couple of hours. Sudan, South Africa, Thailand, India, Rwanda, the Netherlands, Germany, China, just a few of the places that we've been hearing from in the last half hour or so. Also Somalia, where Abdi rang in from. He says more African leaders need to be sent to the African court. We support the International Court, especially in Somalia, he says, where there's been 20 years of impunity by our leaders who have never been tried. Norbert in the Democratic Republic of Congo called us up. He reflects what a lot of you are saying. He says this could be the start of a new beginning for Africa and for our children. But still, plenty of you getting in touch to say that the focus needs to be on those who worked with Charles Taylor before we can move on from this. Ernest in Canada has this question. He says, who aided Charles Taylor with arms and why did they do so? As we've been saying, very busy on the phone lines. If you are trying to get through, keep trying. We're working as hard as we can to pick up all of your calls. Don't forget, you can also get in touch on our Facebook page or on Twitter using the hashtag WHYS.
Maddie, thanks for that. And as Maddie said, we are trying to answer all of your calls. We do have a caller now, though, who does join us on the line from Canada. Zia is with us. What would you like to say?
I would like to say, yes, first of all, thank you very much for taking my call in. And as you are representing, there is an example. No, but it really is not an example. It's a very discriminatory thing because the same thing or the worst things have been going on for the last 60 years. Israel is committing that against Palestinians. There's no action has been taken because it's a very partial thing. Because of the American influence or the British influence, nobody says anything what is happening over there. They are confiscating their property, destroying them and everything, and no action has been taken from anywhere. And then Africa, you have got to realize that they have been under sort of slavery and under subjugation for the last so many years. Now it's a new thing, which is, and naturally all these things they happen, but don't represent that as a very great example that, oh, the justice has been served. No, it hasn't been served.
So, Zia, can you ask a question then to Luis Moreno Ocampo, who joins us?
Yeah, I asked the question. I said everything. It's why nothing has been done against Israel.
All right. Can you answer that for us, Mr. Moreno Ocampo?
Well, I think it's right. I mean, in the past century, there was unimaginable atrocities happening, including colonial attacks in Africa. People were just killed in Africa as they were hunting people in Africa. That's happened. But the world is changing and it's improving. And since in the 21st century, it's a clear consolidation of the idea that this could not happen. If a leader commits crimes to stay in power or to get more power, he will end prosecuted. And that's a new trend. It's still not perfect. It still has to do many things. But that's why this conviction of Charles Taylor is exactly what we need to keep moving to make a better world.
Can we bring in Laura Golika, who is with us from Liberia? Laura, do people there where you are feel like this was unfair, this verdict was unfair, this trial was unfair?
I represent the majority view in Liberia. They feel this trial was unfair. And it's a good thing one of your participants noted that it takes more than one person to make a war. So I think Charles Taylor was used as a scapegoat. But I just want to point out that Luis Moreno Ocampo's, one of the points they brought Charles Taylor to the War Crimes Court was that he provided arms and ammunition to the RUF because he wanted diamonds. But then it's interesting that the judge, when he was reading his verdict yesterday, he pointed out that the prosecutor or the prosecution team did not provide evidence that money was given by Mr. Taylor to the RUF to fuel the armed demonstration in Sierra Leone. So then my question is, what was he convicted for? Why is he being convicted?
Are you able to answer that, Mr. Moreno Ocampo? I know you were not directly involved in this trial.
It's Brenda Holtz and David Crane who make this case, but when you read the decision, the judges found that in many of the incidents, Charles Taylor was not involved in giving orders as a commander, but he knew what happened and he kept providing weapons and support in exchange of diamonds. But also, the judges found evidence that Mr. Taylor was planning 2 incidents, the crimes committed in 2 incidents. So, contrary to what the person say, I believe the judges show impartiality. They did not convict Charles Taylor for everything. They just selected charges where they found evidence, and then they convicted him, showing the judges were judges, doing their job, analyzing the evidence, making impartial decisions, and they decided to convict Charles Taylor.
Luis Moreno Ocampo, thank you for joining us from The Hague with your thoughts. Yasmin here in London, Laura in Liberia. Thank you all for contacting us. This conversation will continue online. Of course, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/World Have Your Say. I'm Lucy Hockings. Thanks for being with us today. Hope to see you again soon.
No szybki tigry to